English voiceover script. A man once walked into the emperor's court with a deer and told everyone it was a horse. Not as a joke, not as a riddle. Not because ancient China had a very confusing pet store. He brought in a real deer. Antlers. Thin legs. Definitely deer energy. Then he pointed at it and basically said, "Look at this horse." And the scary part is not that he said it. The scary part is that many officials agreed. These were not random drunk people outside a tavern. These were court officials, educated men. Men who handled laws, taxes, punishments, military reports, and imperial documents. They knew what a deer looked like. They knew what a horse looked like. They knew this animal was not about to pull a royal carriage. But when a dangerous man in power says a deer is a horse, suddenly everyone's eyesight becomes a political decision. Some officials said yes. Of course. A horse. A beautiful horse. Very antler-shaped, but still a horse. Some officials stayed silent, which in a royal court usually means, "Please do not kill me today." A few officials made the extremely risky choice of saying the obvious. They said it was a deer. And those people learned very quickly that truth can be a career-ending hobby. This is the famous Chinese story of calling a deer a horse. It sounds absurd. It is absurd. But it is also one of the clearest warning signs in political history, because the animal was not the test. The officials were the test. The man behind it was Zhao Gao. He was not the emperor. He was not a battlefield hero. He was not the founder of a dynasty. He was a palace insider. And sometimes, palace insiders are more dangerous than generals. A general needs troops. A palace insider needs access. Access to the ruler. Access to messages. Access to seals. Access to who gets accused. Access to who gets heard. Access to the tiny space between reality and what the emperor is told. That tiny space can swallow an empire. To understand Zhao Gao, we need to go back to the Qin dynasty. The Qin was the state that unified China for the first time. Before Qin, China had been divided into rival kingdoms for centuries. They fought, they made alliances, they betrayed alliances, they built walls, they trained armies, they tried very hard not to be conquered. Then Qin conquered them anyway, one by one. At the top stood Qin Shuang, the first emperor. He was the kind of ruler who looked at a divided world and thought, what if everything had one boss, and that boss was me? He standardized writing. He standardized weights and measures. He standardized roads, laws, coins, and punishments. The Qin state was organized, intense, and absolutely not interested in your feelings. It was like an ancient government machine made of iron, paperwork, soldiers, and fear. Very impressive. Very efficient. Very stressful to live under. And machines like that have one big weakness. If the wrong person gets near the controls, the machine can crush the people it was supposed to govern. Zhao Gao knew the controls. He served inside the palace. He understood documents. He understood punishments. He understood court manners. He understood which prince was weak, which official was nervous, and which enemy needed to disappear. He also understood one of the oldest rules of power. You do not always need to sit on the throne. Sometimes you only need to stand close enough to whisper into the person who does. Then Qin Shuang died. That should have been a normal succession moment. It was not. The first emperor died while traveling away from the capital. The imperial convoy was far from home. The body was there. The throne was suddenly empty. And the future of the empire was sitting inside a traveling political disaster. The strongest heir was probably Fuzhu, the eldest son. Fuzhu had status. He had experience. He was respected by many people. In a healthy succession, that helps. In palace politics, that can make you a target. Because a strong prince might become a strong emperor. And a strong emperor does not need a puppet master. There was another prince, Hai, Younger, weaker, less prepared, much more convenient. Zhao Gao was close to Hai. The Prime Minister Li Si was also caught in the crisis. According to the traditional story, Zhao Gao and Li Si helped hide the first emperor's death for a while. Yes, step one of the new government was basically, keep the dead emperor moving and do not let everyone panic. This is already not a great sign. Then the succession was changed. Fuzhu was ordered to kill himself. Hu Hai became emperor, and Zhao Gao moved closer to the center of power. Hu Hai became Qin or Shi, the second emperor of Qin. He inherited the empire, but he did not inherit the first emperor's force of personality. He got the palace, he got the title, he got the rituals, he got people bowing to him. But he also got rebellions waiting to happen. Exhausted workers, angry conquered regions, harsh laws, suspicious officials, and one extremely dangerous advisor. That advisor was Zhao Gao. Zhao Gao became his teacher and trusted guide. That sounds harmless, like an old tutor explaining grammar. It was not harmless. If the emperor trusts you, you can shape his world. You can decide which reports reach him. You can decide which officials look loyal. You can decide which officials look suspicious. You can turn a useful minister into a threat. You can turn a personal enemy into a traitor. You can make the emperor afraid of everyone except you. That is how a palace becomes a cage. The young emperor still sat on the throne, but Zhao Gao was learning how to control the room around the throne. At first, the danger may not have looked like a disaster. No giant monster appeared over the capital. No sign in the sky said, "Warning, government now controlled by a manipulative palace official." It was slower than that. A little more fear, a little more suspicion, a few more people punished, a few more royal relatives removed, a few more officials deciding it was safer not to speak. That is how courts rot. Not all at once. One silence at a time. Meanwhile, outside the palace, Qin was in serious trouble. The empire was huge, but huge does not mean stable. Ordinary people were tired. They had taxes. They had military service. They had forced labor. They had building projects. They had punishments so harsh that being late could become deadly. The conquered regions did not suddenly wake up one morning and say, "You know what? We love being ruled by Qin now." Many old loyalties were still alive. Former nobles wanted power back. Villages were under pressure. Soldiers and workers were stretched thin. The Qin Empire needed good information. It needed officials who could tell the emperor, "This is not working." It needed someone to say, "The people are angry." It needed someone to say, "Maybe terrifying everyone is not the same thing as governing well." Instead, Zhao Gao helped create a court where people were afraid to be honest. And once honesty becomes dangerous, bad news starts wearing a disguise. Reports become softer. Warnings become smaller. Officials become performers. Everyone tries to guess what the powerful man wants to hear. The emperor sits in the middle of it all, thinking he is ruling reality. But he is actually ruling a stage set. Painted walls, fake windows, and everyone politely agrees that the fire in the corner is just decorative lighting. This is where the deer enters the story. Zhao Gao wanted to know who was still brave enough to resist him. So he created a loyalty test so simple that a child could pass it. He brought a deer into court. He called it a horse. Then he waited. Imagine being one of the officials in that room. You are wearing formal robes. You are standing in the imperial court. The emperor is there. Zhao Gao is there. The deer is also there, probably having the strangest day of its life. Then Zhao Gao says it is a horse. Everyone looks at the animal. Everyone looks at Zhao Gao. Everyone looks at the emperor. And in that moment, the question is not really deer or horse. The question is, how badly do you want to survive? If you say deer, you are correct. Congratulations, you may also be doomed. If you say horse, you are lying. But you are lying in the direction power wants. And in that court, that was the safer direction. So some officials called it a horse. Some stayed quiet. A few said deer. According to the story, Zhao Gao later punished the people who contradicted him. The lesson was not subtle. Truth was no longer enough. Reality needed permission. If Zhao Gao said deer meant horse, then deer meant horse. If Zhao Gao said loyalty meant treason, then loyalty meant treason. If Zhao Gao said an honest official was dangerous, then that official was dangerous. That is why the story became famous. It is not about animal identification. It is about what happens when power tests whether people will deny what they can see. And once people pass that test, the next lies become easier. Lie about a deer, lie about a report, lie about a rebellion, lie about whether the emperor is hated, lie about whether the empire is cracking. Pretty soon, the whole government becomes a room full of people professionally pretending. That is funny for about 3 seconds. Then you remember this government controls armies, prisons, taxes, and death sentences. Outside the palace, reality kept moving. One famous rebellion began with Chen Sheng and Wu Guang. They were leading a group of conscripted men when bad weather delayed them. Under Qin law, being late could mean execution. So they faced a very simple and very dangerous calculation. If we may be killed for being late anyway, why not rebel? That is the kind of thought that makes empires nervous. Their uprising helped ignite a wave of rebellion. Across the old conquered lands, people rose up. Local leaders gathered followers. Old royal families and ambitious fighters saw their chance. The Qin machine started shaking. This was the moment when the court needed clear thinking. It needed fast decisions. It needed officials brave enough to bring ugly news into the room. But Zhao Gao's court had trained people to protect themselves first, and the empire second. That is a terrible emergency plan. The emperor needed reality. He got performance. He needed warning. He got silence. He needed a deer. He got a horse. Eventually, even Qin or Shi became inconvenient to Zhao Gao. The puppet was no longer useful enough, so Zhao Gao helped force the emperor to die. That is the cold truth of puppet politics. The puppet master does not love the puppet. He loves the strings. After Qin heir Shi, another member of the royal family, Ziying briefly took power. Ziying was not fooled by Zhao Gao forever. He had Zhao Gao killed. For a moment, that sounds satisfying. The villain is gone. The dangerous minister is dead. The deer has been avenged, great. But history is rarely that neat. By then, Qin was already badly damaged. The rebellions were too strong. The government had lost too much trust. The people had been pushed too hard. The old kingdoms were rising through the cracks. Killing Zhao Gao removed one poisonous man. It did not repair the poisoned system. Soon, the Qin dynasty fell. This is the wild part. Qin Shi Huang had unified China for the first time. He built an empire meant to last for ages. He wanted order so strong that no one could break it. But after his death, the dynasty collapsed in only a few years. Not because one deer had a bad day in court. The deer was innocent. The deer did not destroy the Qin dynasty. The Qin collapsed because its rule was too harsh. Its labor demands were too heavy. Its conquered people were angry. Its succession was broken, and its leaders could not fix mistakes fast enough. But Zhao Gao's deer story shows the sickness inside the palace. It shows a government where fear had become stronger than truth. It shows officials learning that survival mattered more than honesty. It shows a ruler trapped behind people who were supposed to serve him, but were really managing what he could see. And it shows how ridiculous tyranny can look right before it becomes deadly. Because tyranny is not always a thunderstorm. Sometimes it is a man in court saying, "This deer is a horse," and everyone else deciding whether they want to keep breathing. That is why the story still works. Every age has its own deer and horse moment. Every office, court, government, family, or organization can have a moment when someone powerful says something obviously false. Everyone sees the deer. Everyone knows it is a deer. Then the room goes quiet. People look around. They calculate the cost of speaking. That pause tells you everything. In a healthy system, someone can laugh and say, "No, that is a deer." In a sick system, people nod and compliment the horse. Zhao Gao understood that most people do not need to believe a lie to repeat it. They only need to fear the punishment for refusing. That made him powerful for a while. But it also helped make the Qin court useless when the empire needed truth the most. Because lies are not just ugly, they are stupid. If your house is burning and everyone is afraid to say fire, you do not have loyalty. You have smoke inhalation. The Qin wanted total control. It got silence. It wanted obedience. It got fake agreement. It wanted an empire that would last forever. But inside the palace, a deer became a horse. And outside the palace, the empire was already falling apart. So remember Zhao Gao. Remember the court. Remember the officials staring at antlers and trying to decide what answer would keep them alive. Because sometimes the most dangerous sentence in history is not a battle cry. It is not a royal decree. It is not even a threat. Sometimes it is just this. What a nice horse.